Edward Theodore Gein, the name of a serial killer that may not ring a bell to many people, but is one of the most infamous serial killers ever born on Earth. We all know one of the most iconic horror movies of all time, The Silence of the Lambs. What if I told you that part of the inspiration for that movie had to do with the actions of Edward Gein? We will be taking a peek into Ed's early childhood and family. After we finish watching him grow up, we will look at the crimes he committed as an adult. And finally, when Ed is taken into custody, we will find out what really led to his killing rampage. Just as any other kid, Ed was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin, August 27, 1906. According to History.com, he grew up with an alcoholic father, an extremely religious mother, and his older brother, Henry George Gein. The two grew up and were raised in Plainsboro, Wisconsin, on an extremely remote farm, away from civilization. All that's interesting states that Augusta was said to confide Ed and Henry to preach the Bible. She often preached that the world was evil, all women were prostitutes, and that drinking and immortality were works of the devil. A.C. Grimes states that Ed's mother and father's marriage was horrible. Augusta believed that drinking alcohol was the work of the devil, but refused to get a divorce from her husband for religious purposes. Augusta did not allow her kids to have friends, and often beat them in fear that they would become alcoholics like their father, thus resulting in Ed developing some serious mental struggles. Ed had a speech impediment that was not fixed, which made him target for many bullies. John Krosky stated that this led to some strange behavior that was reported by his classmates. Ed's classmates recalled him to be extremely shy, but would often have strange outbursts of laughter. It was said that when Ed would return home from school, his father would beat him in the head until his ears rang. Ed's father died in 1940. In 1944, Henry died in a fire, and in 1945, Augusta died of a stroke. After the death of his mother, the farm was owned by him and became his responsibility. Ed became completely obsessed with his mother and boarded up all the rooms that she used often, and only stayed in the bedroom off the kitchen in order to preserve the furniture and other items in the room. Ed was said to see and hear his mother in the house, but she was dead. Now that we've finished watching Ed grow up, let's get into his crimes. Ed's older brother died in 1944, as I mentioned before, but people put the blame on Ed. All That's Interesting explained that one of their annual chores was burning dead vegetation, but the fire got out of control and the fire department had to be called. When firefighters arrived, Ed reported Henry missing and was later found in the marsh face down. Henry was pronounced dead by asphyxiation, but later, first responders found various bumps and bruises on Henry's head. But there was not enough evidence to convict Ed with murder. After the death of his mother, Ed suffered greatly, and as a way to cope, he turned to grave digging. Grave digging is the act of digging up the graves of the deceased. Ed would do this often, and even more disturbing is that he would dig up the graves of middle-aged women that resembled his mother. Ed would proceed to find the graves of women and dig their dead bodies out of the ground. He would take skin, skull, lips, faces, and other body parts, including a woman's torso, to make a corset and female genitals. He was said to create skin chairs, skin gloves, skulls were made into bowls, and the faces were used to make masks and lampshades. All That's Interesting reported that this was all discovered by police when Ed was charged with the murder of Bernice Warden. Bernice Warden was a clerk at the local hardware store, and her son was the deputy sheriff. When her son noticed that his mother went missing, he went searching for her. When the sheriff entered the store, he noticed that there were bloodstains on the floor and a note from Ed stating that he'd be back in the morning for a gallon of antifreeze, which was indeed purchased by Ed in the morning. When authorities went to Ed's home to arrest him, they found all the dug-up body parts, and Bernice Warden hung up like a gutted deer. She was decapitated and her heart was extracted from her body. They also found the remains of another missing woman, Mary Hogan. Now that Ed has been taken into custody, let's go over what caused Ed to go completely and utterly insane. When Ed was taken into custody, the house was searched for dug-up body parts and any other victims of murder. Police reported that they found body parts from at least 9 deceased women from the various graveyards that he did his diggings at. Ed was taken into custody and questioned by police, but pleaded not guilty to killing Bernice Warren or Mary Hogan. During the interrogation, John Krosky stated that Ed was said when he went to the cemeteries, he would be in a dazed-like state and not remember any of his diggings. Ed also stated that the reasons for his diggings is because he was trying to make a woman's soup so that he could completely embody his mother. While the remains of Mary Hogan were found in Ed's home, he was only charged with one account of first-degree murder, the murder of Bernice Warden. Bibliography.com stated that Ed was found to be mentally unfit for his first trial and was placed in jail until he was ready to be retried. 11 years after his arrest, Ed was retried but was again found to be mentally unfit. He was sent to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. All That's Interesting reported that while in the hospital, Ed was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a brain disorder that causes delusion, hallucination, and speech problems. It is likely that Ed had early signs of schizophrenia because of the speech impediment that he had. According to bibliography.com, in 1974, Ed applied for petition of release, but it was denied by the court. Only a few years later, in 1977, Edward Theodore Gein died of cancer in the Mendota Mental Hospital. After walking through the shoes of one of the most infamous serial killers in America, I hope that you learned something new and continue to do your own research. Through my research, we learned about Ed's early childhood and family, the crimes he committed often as an adult, and finally, the illnesses and trial. Thank you for learning about Ed Gein.